to the book that you and Fabian co-wrote, the Big Boys.
Oh, it's blurry. There we
it's
go.
Getting blurry there, maybe in front of you. Big Boys Don't Cry, and I guess it's a good segue to link into how, you know, after years of teaching in London, how you actually got into how the book. I mean, if we got the book that just got launched this year, if we go back to how did you even come up with a book about mental health?
Just before we do though, Nandi, you should have gone into a media degree with a segue business. I like it. top host and presenter. Yeah, you've missed your calling.
Still plenty of time.
You're in it now. Well, yeah. So I hinted at this probably earlier, and going back to some of your perceptive questions earlier, perhaps the Kent country upbringing. There's a lot of positives about it, but there's a lot of time to think in Kent because it's not as fast paced as London. So I think a lot of people from my school actually weirdly have there's a few cases of suicide in the school I went to. There's quite a lot of cases of mental health and depression, and at the moment it's a school in Kent. There's the Sam West Foundation that's been set up for a child who unfortunately took his life. His brother and this boy Sam West and his brother's now taken that into a charity and even been to Buckingham Palace. And so at this grammar school, Winston Kent, there's a big push for mental health. And even in my day, one of my friends unfortunately lost their life. I'm not sure if it was suicide or not, but it could have been. So that's been sort of hanging in the background. And I remember all these endless days in Kent, summers that went on forever, having a lot of time to think. And sometimes I could get a bit down, kind of thinking. Because when you're from Kent, it's a bit like who's the not sort of Belle from what's the Beauty and the Beast? You know, there must be more than this provincial life she sings, doesn't she? Getting out and going to the big city and all this. Now, I never dreamt of going to the big city, but you kind of, if you're going to be a presenter, you have to go to the big city. It always struck me that one day when you're out of Kent, the big things are going to happen. You know, because there's not. But you kind of realise when you get to these big cities, perhaps they're not as glittered with gold as you might think. And so going in these schools, it was tough. And I worked in the special needs school that you've been to, and not as a student, Nandy, but as you were. And as you know, there were a lot of restraints. There were a lot of difficult kids, and I think I got quite worn out by all the battle that was endless there with these kids. And one day I woke up kind of. I'd been down to Kent to see a friend. It's all in the book. You can buy for nearly £10. I went canoeing with a friend of ours, Ned Crow, down in I think it was Margate, but I can't remember where it was now. We went canoeing, and that night, so I'd had a really good summer holiday. I'd been canoeing with a friend. Went to bed that night and woke up, bolted upright at 3 o'clock in the morning, dripping with sweat. And I suppose it could only be compared to something like when our army officers come back and get the PTSD from the war or something. It was like I had this awful dream of being attacked by one of the kids at the school, and I actually had been attacked by that child once. You know, he swung a big wooden shelf with nails in it to try and hit another student, and I had to duck.
Wow.
And so I'd had quite a lot of threatening experiences at that school, and I think I just dealt with them in my stride. And being a bloke, hadn't really talked about it, just carried on having a laugh and living my life. And then one day it all caught up. So I woke up sweating and stressed out, and that really quickly went into a kind of deep anxiety / depression, whatever you want to call it. And it took me a long time to get out of it. And I had prayer, I had really good friends, counsellors, others. Tried every different technique you could, and it just wouldn't go, and I got worse and had to be signed off from work. And this was, I was a guy who didn't have millions of skeletons in my closet. I had a lovely child in Kent. I don't know if it was a resilience thing, I don't know what it was, I just cracked basically. And so that happened, and I think once you've had it once, the sort of fight or flight thing, it can come back. And then, as you know, as a good friend, I've had a few experiences since of it coming back, the anxiety, and usually work related, usually stressful experience like Ofsted inspection or something, or a difficult boss or whatever it is, triggers it. And then, but answering your question, the reason we wrote the book is because I was relatively good at English at school. I like writing about things to kind of get them off your chest. I wrote my story, sent it to another friend who's the co-author of the book, and it helped him what I wrote, and then he was able to write his story, and his had gone a bit further, that he was, you know, going to commit suicide, which fortunately for me, maybe my faith, whatever, I wasn't down that route, but he was, and he had a young family. So together we decided, look, this could help more other men than just us. And it's about men, because I am one, and I think men are not quite so good at opening up, are they, and expressing we're not coping, or you know, it felt like a sign of weakness. So yes, so we did the thing, called it Big Boys Don't Cry. As you know, there's a website, www.bigboysdon'tcry.co.uk, and you can access it there on a Kindle at the moment. And there's some amazing contributors, Andy, lots of people from different walks of lives, and many different stories.
Yeah. I think there's something that you mentioned that I wanted to find, and this was when you first had the sort of that shock in the middle of the night, and you went down that route.
Yeah.
Knowing you as a very outgoing, bubbly, happy guy, the lighter part, how did everyone around you react to seeing you in this state? Was it? I think that's really key to.
Yeah.
What was that like?
Another great question, Andy. Good host. I'm doing your PR here.
Okay.
Actually, it was really hard, and I think I know myself quite well. I'm probably quite a people pleaser. I like being upbeat and, you know, not centre of attention, but I probably do. But I like being a positive person in the room who's getting people cheered up. And I found that one of the hardest things about this illness, which is what it is, the anxiety gripped me, because I suddenly lost, you know, not only lost my voice, lost my personality, just was in rooms downcast, and people picked up very quickly, like, what's up with you? But also losing a lot of weight, physical weight, and there's physical symptoms with it, losing a lot of energy, which is what I was famous for, and then just feeling I kind of felt zapping people. And, you know, they talk down their life about radiators and drains, and I kind of felt like this, a bit like this drain. But the problem with sort of mental health is a lot of it's in your head, so I would be trying doubly hard to be my normal self, but thinking that everyone else is thinking, oh, you're really negative, or but they weren't saying it. No one was saying it. I just thinking they were thinking it. Yeah. So it kind of zapped me twice. And also, as my dad would say at the time, I would say, I love you to lots of people a lot. And he was saying, look, you're freaking me out. Where's the banter? Where's the... My dad's very public school boarding. He's like, what is this? No.
It's just where's the
jokes? Yeah. And in my mind, because I was anxious, I was kind of thinking, maybe this is it. Maybe these are my last days. I've got to tell everyone I love them, and I'm on my way out. And that was all in my head. It was all anxiety.
But then that was freaking everyone out. Just hearing this.
Yeah, I think people just can't, you know, because I was so angsty. They were kind of, the energy was going a different way, and they were like, just relax. Don't, you know, no one's dying here. Just because you have that real inside you, and I know a lot from the book. A lot of people who are anxious, or I don't know, bipolar or depressed. There's a lot of urgency to everything, because you kind of think, is this my last day? Is it? So you feel a very need to.
So one of the things that I've known when I work with families with mental health, especially if there's a faith, and you've spoken great about your faith. Yeah. How is it in that setting? Because there seems to be the conflict about you're somebody of faith. Well, you have faith. There's Bible passages, and we'll pray for you, and you should be healed and cured and delivered. And that also seems to be an added pressure and a burden. Was that anything? Did you relate to any of that? Did any of that? Yeah.
I sometimes wonder if it's because I wasn't Nigerian. If I'd been Nigerian, I would be healed in seconds. I don't know, actually. I did sort of, before I came on to speak to you, I thought I'm going to flick into that book called the Bible that some people read, and just get a verse. And the verse that came out to me, then I will answer the question properly, was Ephesians 3:20, which is with... actually, Nadia, you know what it is. You know your Bible well. What's Ephesians 3:20? It says... It says, with God's power working through us, God can do much, much more than anything we can ask or imagine. And you're thinking, so what? What's that got to do with anything? And I was kind of thinking, every time I've had this anxiety illness, which may be 3 or 4 times in my life, as I say in the book, each time I've had prayer, I've had good friends support me, I've had Bible verses given to me, I've gone down alternative medicine, I've had medication, I've had lots of almost every type of thing you can think of within reason. And every time I've got better, I can never pin it to like, and then God said in the cloud, do this, or someone said a Bible verse and it all turned around, or the doctor gave me a different dosage of medication and suddenly I was better. It's always been a combination of all these things together, and suddenly I've just kind of come out of it, almost like naturally, sometimes very quickly, just a few days and suddenly I'm feeling better and then I'm feeling better. And if I look back, all the different, as you know, God works through doctors, God works through friends. The one thing I would say is I've been very blessed that I've got excellent friends, and in these times who your real friends are the people who stick by, and as you know from your work, I'm blessed that I do have a faith, and perhaps sometimes my Christian friends have been a little bit more loyal and a bit more willing to stick by, where perhaps not all of them, but some of my other friends have been a bit, it's not the fun Patrick anymore, let's get out of here. So that's been a good witness to me. And also just my present curate in my church is I apologise for this swearing on your show, but he's a Fulham fan, and he's actually the chaplain at Fulham Football Club, and he never said anything that like blew me away. During every week, every Wednesday, phoned to check how I was, and I was expecting him to kind of give me amazing Bible verses and tell me that God said this to him, and he never like that. It was just like, how are you? How's your week? But I realised as I got to the end of it, he was there every week without. I knew it was coming. Some weeks I was bad, some was good, but he just kept it going. And I phoned him today actually because I've had a bit of a blip recently, and thanked him and said, look, thanks just for being there all the way through. And sometimes.
Go ahead.
Go on. No, I was just saying, with your job, you probably know that sometimes just being there is enough for something.
Consistency. I think one of the things that you've said has really been powerful is because there has been, I know within the Christian faith community, there's that separation. It's almost as if mental illness isn't seen the same way as physical illness, and so there's this expectation that, you're feeling low and depressed, here's some scripture that should cheer you up and we'll pray for you, and you should snap out of it. And so they don't seek help. They say no to medication, no to therapy. We just get prayer and intercession, and I think and so. But it's great to have heard your experience, seeing that it's been a combination of other things that have really helped shape it, as opposed to saying, forget prayer, I just needed medication, or no, I just needed the therapy. But it was like a sense of the combination, friends, family, faith, medication, therapy, all working together. And I think it's a beautiful take for those else who are Christians or Muslims or anything who think that faith and mental illness are separate, but you've really sort of summed it up.
No, thank you. I'm not going to lie. Some of the Bible verses, and as you said, other faiths might have what they have, but for me, Christian, there were nights where I felt incredibly low, and that would be the only thing I read before going to bed, like one tiny verse, and that might have just got me through the night. It might not have made me wake up the next day thinking, it's changed my life, but that might have been just enough that night to get me not to be stressed out all night or sleep. So there's definitely value in it, and I just think sometimes when you're in that headspace, it's very hard to think properly, and the medication's spinning your mind. So my perception of God and faith was a bit distorted. When you're very down and low, it's hard to be positive about anything, really. So sometimes too many scriptures or too many words just made you feel like head spinning.
But were you able to, and as we come to that, were you able to then communicate, were you able to be honest to people to say, that's enough now? Or did you think, they're helping me, I need to just take whatever they're giving me?
I think I sometimes, which is not my personality, as you know, I'd often sometimes have to cut. One thing about being anxious or stressed or depressed is you become very self-centered, because it's fight or flight. You can't think outside of yourself because you're just trying to survive. So I found it very difficult at the time. If a family member or someone I loved was telling me their problems, I felt awful inside, because I was thinking, I just don't care. I haven't got the energy to think about you. And that's counter to everything I believe. So there was this conflict of like, I'm a Christian. I love my sister. She's telling me a big problem. I should be caring and praying for her. I just don't want it because it's making me depressed, thinking she's depressed and I can't deal with it.
Yeah.
So I was sometimes like, sorry, I've got to go, or I wouldn't answer people's phone calls because I just didn't have the energy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, no, that's really powerful because, as I said, so many times I work with kids and families, and they go through that, and they're explaining how they're cutting off their friends, and in some cases we're like, well, you need your network in order to help you with your recovery, but then they're explaining that, yes, but when they're not burdening me, but having this sense of, here's what's going on with me, and it's like, I can't help me, how can I help you? And it's making me far worse. And it becomes a balance, and it's hard to even communicate that because you don't want to feel like you're offending. Looking back, what would be an advice for somebody else who's going through that, how to balance it out?
Well, the thing you said earlier on about consistency, I think like some of the people I enjoyed talking to when I was in my lowest ebbs, it might sound boring, but like the kind of, my mum would sort of say really mundane things that happened in Kent. Like she'd rearrange the flowers, or I don't know, the dog had been on 2 walks, and you know, almost that's easier when you're in that state to hear the everyday normal, because it's safe and it's normal, familiar, than someone saying, did you know that Aunt Jill is sick and she's dying, or which you don't want to hear because you can't deal with that heavy stuff.
Okay.
Or someone asking you too many questions to push in further into your depression, you know. Sometimes just every day. My dad would often say things like, Wolves lost to Arsenal, how do you feel about that? And you think, oh, this is the same old boring questions, but it was kind of familiar and comforting.
Yeah.
So maybe there's no harm sometimes in just having, you know, the mundane chat that's familiar and easy, low level, not too challenging. Just that it's having the communication with someone is good.
And it's actually, there's the same thing you hear from people who had bereavement. They say everyone's afraid to speak to them, so no one speaks to them and everyone disappears. And it's interesting that they say, no one just says, how are you doing, what's going on, couldn't get you anything, because everyone's like, I don't know what to say, so we don't say anything. So it's really good to, I think for a take-home for anyone, it's just that sense of be as normal and mundane as you can, almost like an Arsene Wenger kind of thing, and, and to help them through it.
I just have one question for you, Nandy, before we go. I mean, you've had 30 years of kind of depression with Liverpool's league performance. Has that been a sort of weight lifted from your shoulder, like the greatest medicine you can have with Klopp winning? And
you know what? I think until we actually see Jordan Henderson lifting the trophy, and then we see the colours on it, I think it doesn't sink in really. I mean, the Guard of Honours and stuff are good, but I think it's still. Even when we came back from the break and knew that, okay, we just needed one more point or stuff like that, I think it hasn't sunk in. It hasn't truly sunk in. And 30 years. I mean, I grew up in Liverpool in the 80s, where it wasn't a big deal. There's hardly anyone on the street because, next year we're going to win something. I think Man United fans are probably the closest to seeing how, since Ferguson left, how it's like not to win anything,
which is great.
But no, as we wrap up, we will put information as to where people can get the book. Is it Amazon? Can you get on Amazon?
You can buy on Amazon, yes.
But also on the website bigboysdon'tcry.com.
Yeah, I mean, it's very important because there are other films and books called Big Boys Don't Cry. Okay. So you need to put in the www.bigboysdon'tcry.co.uk. Go on the website, and that's the best way for finding out how to access it on Kindle. But it's also coming out soon on a sort of hardback version, but probably more in September.
Okay.
So we're just going to get it published. So it's a great book. There's some amazing contributors, as you know, Andy, and we also just hope more than anything else that if it helps one person, that would be brilliant. It's got lots of different sections where if you've got like PTSD or depression or bipolar, you can, instead of having to go to read the whole book like a narrative, you can jump to that section and find something quick and relevant to you. Lots of top tips, lots of websites to help, and kind of hopefully someone who's sharing a similar issue to you have.
Yeah. No. Okay. I mean, that's great. And as I said, it is suicide under 45 is the biggest single killer of men, and I know Prince William is really pushing it because men growing up, it's just that the ability to talk about our emotions we just don't have, and it's quite easy to talk and deflect on sports and other things, women's sports, things like that, than to really be open and honest. Our final, Patrick. All right.
Has the whistle gone with full time now? See you later.
Okay. Take care.
Your love is rated X. That means you're extra, extra.